Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. So this December month we are completing GS1 and today's topic is modern India history, and we will be covering 2 questions from these 2 topics and 1 question from current affair. So let's see 3 questions. So the very first question is related to Savitribai Phule and her role in the women education in 19th century. And the second question is related to partition of Bengal and the intentions of Lord Curzon behind that partition of Bengal. The third question is related to the ineffective use of the fertilizers and the concerns behind that. So these are 3 questions. The third one is related to current affair, and the first and the second question is related to modern Indian history. So let's start one by one. So the first question says, it was Savitribai Phule who laid the foundation stone for the women's education in India. And we need to elaborate on this. Elaborate, this keyword is about more detailing and more information. And the question is setting the context that Savitribai Phule has played the foundational role in championing the women education in early or mid 19th century. Okay. So in introduction, you can set some background, you can set some contemporary situations or the environment prevailing at that particular time and how Savitribai Phule has challenged those societal norms and promoted for the women's education. So you can write in intro that irrespective of the odds or the ills prevailing or existing in the society at that particular time, like society was entrenched in the patriarchal norms. Women's access to education was very restricted, and the people were of the mindset that the women's role is only till the domestic roles only. So irrespective or despite all these situations prevailing at that particular time, Savitribai Phule challenged these regressive societal norms and promoted or advocated for the women education. She understood and she recognized the importance of women's education in the women empowerment, their assertiveness or their assertiveness towards their rights, and have their says in the decision making at the household level and at the societal level. And she also used education as a tool to break free from the shackles of the oppressions. So she advocated for the women's education, she advocated for the women empowerment, she advocated for the child rights, women child right, that against child marriage, against the gender discrimination, and also against the sati pratha or sati system. She also promoted widow remarriage. So this way you can set the background in the introduction, and then you can write that these are the ways that how she has advocated for the women education, and this would be the demand of the question. You will write some arguments on that. So towards conclusion, what you can write that she went beyond the women education or the women empowerment. She fought against the caste-based discrimination, untouchability, and other societal ills of the society. So towards the conclusion, you can write this thing. So let's start with the main body part, that is the contribution of Savitribai Phule. So the very first thing is she herself as a woman, and she promoted the role of being a teacher, being a female teacher. If she can study, if she can accept the education, she can study and she can be educated, why cannot you? So she, by donning the role of the first female teacher, she promoted other women child or other girl child to stand up and to get the education. And she also promoted the women's or the girls' families also to send their children to schools. First thing. And second thing, being a female teacher, parents will also feel encouraging that their kids are safe in the schools because the female teachers are present over there. So the second thing is she opened the first indigenously run female school only, girls school only in 1848 with the help of her husband also. Next is, if she has to promote the education amongst the masses, what she has to do, because people are concerned for their daily wages also, or for their earnings, or for their livelihoods. So what she did, she opened the night school in 1855 for the agriculturalists and laborers, especially women also. Then now the women, or the people, or the students, they are taking part in the education system. Now they are getting admitted into the school. But what about if they are taking admission only and not completing their courses or completing their education? So to check the dropouts, she come up with the idea that providing stipends for getting education. Then she was a source of inspiration. How? She promoted, or she started some activities like writing or some painting activities and some like essay writing competitions, which impacts the other aspects of the life also. Like one of her student named Mukta Salve, she was the first Dalit student who got the name as a who was the face of the Dalit feminism and who started the literature of that time. She was a Dalit student and she openly raised her voice against the dominance of the other caste and also about the gender discrimination. So Savitri Bai Phule has impacted a lot of aspects of the life of the people. Next is, she conducted regular parents-teacher meeting. For what purpose? So as to make aware parents about the impact, about the positive impact that education can put. So to increase the awareness amongst the parents to send their children to schools and to continuously doing that. Except all this directly promoting the women education, she opened the Mahila Seva Mandal. For what purpose? To raise awareness about the women's right and about the other social issues. She also promoted education through these aspects also. Next is, so she opened Infanticide Prohibition Center. It was a care center and it was known as a Bal Hatya Pratibandhak Grihe. So this was the main contribution of Savitri Bai Phule. As before the introduction we started that how you can end your answer by putting the contribution or by writing the contribution that beyond women education or women empowerment, she advocated for against untouchability, workers' right and the caste-based discrimination. So she goes beyond that and she has to face challenges like social ostracization, humiliation and physical assault in all these empowering process of the women. Then comes the Savitri Bai Phule's legacy still now. It is contributed in shaping a better India. So this way you can write your answer. Let's see the model answer. Telling something about Savitri Bai Phule, then contributions, then finally conclusion. So this way you can write your first answer. Now let's move on to the second answer. The partition of Bengal was not carried out for the administrative convenience, but rather as a culmination of Curzon's systematic assault against Bengali nationalism. And we need to analyze this statement, that if it is yes, then how, and we need to write on the multiple aspect also, means we need to dig deeper information we have to explain. So for introduction, you can write some background, you can write about some Bengal partition of 1905, that British decided to partition Bengal into two provinces, that is Western Bengal, which comprises of Western Bengal, Odisha and Bihar and some other provinces, and the second provinces would be East Bengal and Assam. So British decided to partition the Bengal in 1905, and you can also write that what would be the impact of this partition, that the public outcry was there and the Lord Curzon, who was the Viceroy of India, British India at that time, he has to face backlash from the Indian people, from the Indian nationalists also. So this way you can write this particular introduction. You can also set the context that this partition was a deliberate strategy of Lord Curzon to suppress Bengali nationalism, because this is the question demand asking this question. So you can also write that it is a deliberate strategy to suppress Bengali nationalism. And why Bengali nationalism? Because the Bengali nationalism, due to the dynamic socio-political conditions prevailing at that time, that were burgeoning the nationalistic sentiments against the British policies, British economic policies, which were favoring the British interest only and harming the India's interest. also the cultural imposition by Britishers on India, and also against the British exploitation of the India's natural resources. So there were some background, the dynamic socio-political conditions or the changes which were going on, and due to this fueled the dissent between amongst the Indians. So these were the background of the Indian nationalism, and due to increasing nationalistic sentiments or the tendencies, Britishers tried to suppress it down via partition of Bengal in 1905. So this was the background set in the introduction. So this was the introduction we have seen. Now next comes to the body part. Body. In the question, they are setting the context that they have done the partition for the administrative convenience. But there were some scholars also which shows that there were the deliberate strategies behind this partition of Bengal so as to suppress the Bengali nationalism. So what we have to do in our body part, we have to cite some examples or some arguments in favor that yes, there were some administrative reasons which they have quoted, but again we have to tell some other arguments also that do not coincide with whatever the reasons they are providing that they are doing for the administrative measures. Like we have to quote some arguments that these are some arguments that do not coincide with whatever the Britishers are saying. So our body part will have the two parts. The first part is the official administrative reasons or the official rationale they told. So the very first thing is administrative inconvenience. They quoted the reason that Bengal is of the vast size. It is overly populated. Approximately 78 million people are there, and it is very vast size. And governing from the one center to all these vast regions is very difficult. So for the efficiently and effective administrative process, for good governance, we have to divide it into the two regions. So these were the reasons they have cited for the administrative inconvenience. Next is, they said that if we divide or separate or partition into two parts, then the development of Assam would be in the better way. Then the Dhaka would be the new capital for that particular region, and from that center, the Assam region can be easily administered. Next is Muslim empowerment. Then the Dhaka, the new capital of newly Muslim majority province would be made or would be established. So this would enhance the unity in that community, because if the provinces are divided into the religion basis, so that would be the major Muslim dominated religion, so the unity would increase and the development of that particular region would enhance. So these were the reasons they have cited. Next is the real intentions of Lord Curzon. Now we have to put some argument which shows that these also were done. They do not coincide with whatever the Lord Curzon was saying. So we have to cite some reasons. The very first thing is, Britishers come up with the Calcutta Municipal Amendment Act. They have passed the Indian Universities Act also, and they have also passed the Indian Official Secrets Amendment Act 1904. Now what are these acts? The very first act reduces the elected representation in the Calcutta Corporation. Means the elected representation which represents the Indian people, they got reduced and increased the nominated member. So this curtailed the political rights, and when the political rights are being curtailed, it means the Indians' liberty is getting curtailed. Next is, this also suppressing the government's growing aspirations of the educated Indian middle class. So this is the political reason for that. Next, they tried to control the education system as well by passing Indian University Act of 1904, now placing Calcutta University under governmental control. Now, British government or British governance system will decide who's the university's fellow will be. Like now the university is under the control of British government. Next is curtailing press freedom. By passing Indian Official Secrets Amendment Act 1904, they tried to stop the spread of nationalistic idea through the press, through newspaper, through the media. These were some arguments that show that these intentions were not for the administrative purposes but for the suppression of Bengali nationalism. So we have completed two parts in our body part. Now finally conclusion. What we can write, that although they done the partition of Bengal, but the backlash they have to face and the public outcry was there, and immediately Swadeshi movement was started. So that Swadeshi movement has unified the nationalists, the moderates and the neo-nationalists. And this Swadeshi movement, it was the first ever large-scale mass participation for the national cause. And for this movement, till 1911, the Britishers had to nullify this partition. So Swadeshi movement seen the success for that. Finally, it resulted into the nullification of Bengal partition in 1911. So this was our second question. Let's see the model answer. Starting with the introduction about some basics, that how it got divided into two parts, then official administration reason they have stated, then the real intentions, and finally the conclusion. Now let's move on to the third question. Discuss the concerns associated with the use of fertilizers in India. Also mention the initiatives taken for efficient use of fertilizers. So the question have two parts. The very first thing is we need to write down the concerns for the usage of fertilizers, and the second is about governmental initiatives. So you can start your introduction with the basic definition of what the fertilizers are. So you can write that fertilizers are the inorganic or the organic substances that provides nutrients, one or more nutrients that are required for the plant growth. You can also write about the global ranking of India, that India is the second largest consumer of fertilizers following by China. Then you can also make a small diagram about the fertilizers classification, that it is classified into three parts: primary fertilizers, secondary and micronutrients. So the primary fertilizers are further divided or classified on the type of the nutrient they provide to the soil, that is N, P, K, nitrogenous, phosphatic and potassic. Then secondary fertilizers like calcium, magnesium and the sulfur they provide to the soil. Then micronutrients like iron, zinc, boron, chloride, etc. These fertilizers provide to the soil for the plant growth. So this way you can start your introduction. Then comes to the body part, that we need to write down the concerns associated with the fertilizers use. The very first concern we all know, that is the environmental concern. How environmental concerns? That excessive use of the fertilizers which have nitrates and phosphates, it results into the eutrophication, and eutrophication harms the aquatic life. Then comes the nitrogenous fertilizer, the fertilizer that is based on nitrogen content like urea. This emits nitrous oxide that has a potent greenhouse gas, and this exacerbates the climate change impact. Next is over-reliance on the urea, and urea impacts the soil fertility, and when the soil fertility or soil gets degraded, it impacts the plant growth. It sometimes damages the plant also, the excessive use of the fertilizers, and also hampering the crop quality. It means the crop productivity also get reduced with the excessive use of the fertilizer, and also when they are not put in the proportions. Next is the fiscal concerns. What are the fiscal concerns? Because the government provides high subsidy, especially on the urea and DAP, approximately 5% of the GDP goes on these subsidies only. So this provides, or this puts the fiscal burden on the government. Next is import dependence. Entire potash requirement, 90% of the DAP and 20% of the urea is getting fulfilled. The needs of these particular fertilizers are import dependent. So for both of these reasons, they put the fiscal burden on government. Next is accessibility and quality issues or the quality concerns. The very first thing is these subsidies or these fertilizers, they do not reach, or only 30% of the total subsidies reach to the small farmers. So these maximum benefits are ripened up or taken up by the large farmers only. Then second is nutrients ratio. They have to be ideally used in 4:2:1, N, P and K. But farmers are using sometimes, like in 2022 Kharif season, they were using 12:5:1. So this disproportionate usage impacts the plant growth, it damages the plants and it hampers the crop quality. Next is the initiatives for the efficient fertilizer use. So we need to write down the governmental initiatives. The very first initiative is PM Pranam, PM Program for Restoration, Awareness Generation, Nourishment and Amelioration of Mother Earth. So what this program is all about? The government is promoting the alternative fertilizers like the organic fertilizer, compost based fertilizer, and reduce the usage of the chemical fertilizer, or we need to use these chemical fertilizers in a balanced way. Next is One Nation One Fertilizer scheme by Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizers under the fertilizer subsidy scheme. which is this scheme is also known as this Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Urvarak Pariyojana. Government has come up with one nation, one fertilizer scheme so as to ensure the timely supply of fertilizers to the farmers. Next is liquid nano urea by IFCO. Liquid nano urea, this boost, this decomposes or this getting mixed in the soil very fast, like so these boost the productivity, also enhance the farmers income. Our additional initiatives or the schemes are, the very first thing is fertilizers flying squad by the Department of Fertilizer so as to stop the diversion and the black marketing of these fertilizers, of this subsidized fertilizer. Next is nutrient based subsidy scheme. So the government is providing the fixed subsidy rates for some nutrients annually. Next is soil health card scheme. In this, the government is promoting the crop-wise recommendations of the nutrients and the fertilizers. Next is neem coating of urea. Government has mandated urea to be neem coated. This dissolves in the soil at a slow pace. This enhances the efficiency and reduces the environmental impact. So these are some governmental initiatives for the efficient fertilizer use. Next is about the conclusion. You can write some challenges and then the way forward, or just summarize your answer, that uncontrolled or unregulated use of the fertilizer harms not only the soil but also impacts the crop quality, crop productivity, and finally the farmer's income. So and also poses the financial burden on the government of this subsidy. So we need to reform this sector, reform these fertilizers usage, and also whatever the subsidies burdens on the government. So we need to emphasize on the transparent policy and also the skill development, that how to properly use this fertilizer so that the fertilizers are getting used in an efficient and effective manner. So this was our answer. Third, let's see the model answer. About the definition of fertilizers, finally fertilizers classification, then concerns, then initiatives. Finally, we need to sustainably use the fertilizers so as to sustainable development of agriculture also and for the farmers as well. So this was the discussion for today for these three questions. So what we are doing, we are completing GS1 syllabus, that is history, society and geography, in December month, and this is a free initiative. You can see the video discussions on YouTube, and in the description box you can find the PDF of the model answer. Also, Vajiram and Ravi has started mains intensive test series for 2024 comprising of 38 tests, some full length tests and some half length tests. So for your holistic and comprehensive preparation for 2024 mains, do join this test series. Thank you. Have a nice day and keep writing. Thank you.